guys? This is the host of No Holding Back, Chris and Yellow. As you guys know, back in 2019, Sony decided to take back their rights for Spider-Man because Disney was giving them a quarter of profits for the web slinger. Sony felt disrespected since it was supposed to be a fair deal, and they originally came up with a deal in 2015, right before Civil War, where Disney was given the rights to use Spider-Man in future movies, including Avenger projects and solo Spider-Man projects. As of right now, they have reached a deal where Disney will present 3 other Spider-Man movies, either as a cameo or in a solo movie, which we're going to see in Spider-Man 3. Disney agreed to pay 25% of the cost of the third film, Spider-Man 3, in exchange for 25% of the profits. After that deal is done, both sides have enclosed the idea for Spider-Man to appear in future MCU movies. And today we have Mas back on the podcast to help us give his take on whether or not Spider-Man should stay in Disney or maybe potentially star in Sony projects and Disney projects. So thank you so much for coming back on the podcast, man.
Hey guys, glad to be back.
So let's start with Sony. So my take on Sony is that if Spider-Man ends up going back to Sony, I think it would be, more grittier, more serious than what we see in the MCU movies. I would see more responsibility from Peter Parker in Spider-Man. He would be fighting more serious villains, and potentially we could see a flashback of Ben Parker's death.
You make some good points. I definitely think there's a good side to going with Sony. They definitely like taking the serious and / darker route. I just think sometimes their story work is a bit on and off. Sometimes they have great stuff, sometimes they have weak stuff.
Yeah, and the problem with that is that going back to Spider-Man 3, Sam Raimi's last film with Spider-Man, is that executives were always, picking at his movie. Originally he didn't want Venom to be in the movie at all. It just because it was going to be fantastic for marketing, selling merchandise, toys, and so on. And he just wanted Sandman, if I'm not mistaken, to be in the third movie. A fourth Spider-Man movie was supposed to come out with Mysterio in it as well. And, maybe he would have included Venom. So hopefully if Tom Holland's Spider-Man goes to Sony full time, he's not going to have to deal with those problems, the creative differences. We're going to see him face off against Tom Hardy's Venom, Jared Leto's Morbius, potentially a Kraven the Hunter. And, that's fantastic. Those are your A-list villains in the Spider-Man universe. And, he could also have allies like Spider-Woman, which is, being developed right now in the Sony productions. And there's other ideas that they're coming up with, like Black Cat, if I'm mistaken, and maybe a Gwen Stacy Spider-Man movie. So maybe we could potentially see a Spider-Verse and see a live-action Miles Morales.
I think Sony has a lot to offer for sure. They definitely have a lot of the assets that would make Spider-Man universe feel more full and like what it really is in the cartoons and I guess like just the comics you like reading, but you also lose a bit when you take him out away from the universe. Because as much as like Spider-Man being alone succeeds so much, you also pull him out of like the Marvel universe and it becomes like Sony's universe, and like they've definitely done some good work. Like we don't need like a Doctor Strange in like the entire film, but if Doctor Strange appears for 15-20 minutes, it's still awesome. Like Thor Ragnarok,
If we could see a Spider-Man cameo in the upcoming Doctor Strange project, where Scarlet Witch is going to be in that movie as well, and there's going to be multiverses. Maybe we could see the introduction of Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man that could connect the Sonyverse to Tom Holland's MCU Spider-Man.
It would be the dream.
Yeah, of course. You've seen it in the animated movie Into the Spider-Verse, where all these different kinds of Spider-Men come together and fight, obviously, Kingpin and Doc Ock. I just think that if he was in Sony, they would respect more of his origins better than what the MCU has been doing right now. Because as of right now, there is no Ben Parker. It's Tony Stark who is adopted uncle, if you really want to say. The responsibility factor, it's like at -2 in my opinion, because he doesn't really have responsibility. Everything was given to him from Tony Stark, the technology, the notes and stuff like that, to build things as well. It's not Peter Parker, making his own web shooters anymore. It's basically Peter Parker inheriting Tony Stark's lab, his technology, his resources. So he's being very dependent still on Tony Stark, even though Tony Stark is dead. He's still relying on Tony Stark in that capacity.
Yeah, that's a very good point, but I feel like they've still gone out of their way to show that even with Tony Stark's assets, he still is a smart guy. Tony finds him in Civil War. He's made his own webs. I mean, that's the only like strength to his actual suit. And then when you see him in like, was it Far From Home? He's able to use Tony's technology, like he knows how everything works. Like no average guy can walk in there and be like, "Oh, I get how this works." He's able to develop his own technology. I feel like in a universe where like Spider-Man exists in the actual Marvel universe and he has all these assets available, in a universe where like Infinity War like level events are happening, why would like Tony be like, "Hey, yeah, your like handmade webs and like all that stuff is super good"? Like no, he's gonna be like, like dude, I can give you like an upgrade or even help you upgrade. So I get where you're coming from because it's not the Spider we're so comfortable with. Like I get that people, I get the whole thing people always like don't like about the whole Tony Stark's like babysitting him, and like I get it. Like it's not like I don't hate it. I get the visual of it, and like they like it's not what they like really want from it. But realistically, like if Thor's fighting alongside Hulk, if Iron Man's like working with other people, he's gonna give them tech. If Captain America's working with Spider-Man, he's gonna train him. Like they work together because they have to protect everything. So I kind of like it.
I wouldn't have mind if Ben Parker was like involved somehow in this universe, and then Tony came in as the new uncle figure, and then he lost Tony as well. So he lost two father figures or uncle figures, whatever you want to consider it. So now there's double devastation, which adds on to Spider-Man's story arc of everyone around him, everyone he loves is affected because of his Spider-Man persona. And if they would have done that take of the character, I feel that it would have been more meaningful. It would have been more serious. And if he goes to Sony, we could see those things happening that we saw in Tobey Maguire's universe and in Andrew Garfield's universe, where people like Gwen Stacy, Harry Osborn, Gwen Stacy's dad, all pass away because of Spider-Man, and he has to deal with that guilt for the rest of his life. And he doesn't want to include people into his life anymore because of all the tragedies that have happened before. Even Ben Parker, Peter could say that it's his fault because Peter is the reason why his uncle died. He told his uncle, "Yeah, you could drive me there and whatever." And so his uncle was waiting for Spider-Man, and during that time, he gets murdered by a criminal. So Peter has to deal with that tragic event for the rest of his life, and and he always remembers the most famous words that Ben Parker says to him: "With great power comes great responsibility." And that's the first tragedy in a line of other tragedies that follows with the Spider-Man universe. It always affects Spider-Man, and it always makes him think, should I just drop the mantle of Spider-Man, the persona of Spider-Man, because it's hurting too many people? Even though I'm helping people, it's hurting my personal life. Like, what do I owe to those people? And I want to see that conflict. And if he goes to Sony, I could see that happening. If he stays in the MCU, he's shielded by the Avengers.
I think there's pros and cons to a bit of everything, but I don't know that Sony's necessarily going to go down your path either. So you don't really win. I feel like maybe the best is they just keep playing within the both. They find a way to incorporate him in Sony and Disney at the same time. Then you get a bit of what you want, but you also get a Spider-Man inside your Avenger films.
With Disney, the thing is that I don't like his CGI costume, first of all. It's too cheesy, and it takes away from the whole character, how he puts on his mask and stuff like that, and his whole like suit. Instead, we're seeing like suits like the Iron Spider, which I don't mind seeing, but I felt like they overused it because you see him using it again in Far From Home. And why would he have to be using a high-tech suit if he's back on planet Earth? He's not in space anymore. There's a lot of questions that I always ask myself after rewatching, Spider-Man in these movies. I think the best take of Spider-Man was in Civil War. I love that, like the way that the costume was presented in that movie. It didn't look too cheesy, and it looked, it was fantastic. And the portrayal of Tom Holland's Spider-Man was spot on. And then as the movies go on and the appearances go on, the dependence on Tony Stark and the side characters, like I just feel like there's no connection between them. Like I don't care for them. Even the new Mary Jane that's played by Zendaya, I don't feel any emotion towards them. Like I would feel for Kristen Dunst's Mary Jane in the Tobey Maguire universe or Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy. I feel no connection to them. They just took like B-list actors, for example, just to like say, oh, these guys go to high school with Peter Parker, but they don't really do anything for Peter's story arc. I feel.
No, that's definitely some great points. I see. I know exactly where you're coming from. I get it, and like, yeah, it's a lot of good points. I don't necessarily have a problem with it right now. I think the Russo brothers definitely had the best take on him for sure, not a question in my mind. Maybe they're playing it a bit too safe and kiddie at Disney, but at the same time, sometimes like I feel like Sony gets it and then they don't. So like I just want to see where they take them in general. But I do know what you mean. I do get it. I do like the serious Spider-Man, like the side characters are definitely not the better ones here. But I do think Tom Holland is the better Spider-Man.
Spider-Man has a lot in common with Batman. They both have so many villains that could potentially star in their own movies or as the main bad guy in a Spider-Man. And if you look at other superheroes, they don't really have that. They only have maybe 4 to 5, if they're even lucky, to choose from to star in their own movies or in those superheroes projects. So Spider-Man has that quality to add to that character, to enhance the character, to enhance the responsibilities, to make the movie so much better because you have the opposite of Spider-Man facing up against him and he needs to adjust and fight to a style that could beat or resembles his villain's style of fighting as well. You need to see that character always changing things, upgrade his web shooters, to maybe like electric or like magnetic web shooters that could defeat like guys like Electro or like a Rhino. You see Batman doing that all the time. He's always upgrading his gadgets. And Spider-Man is the same thing, but as a teenager, obviously, and he doesn't have all the resources like Bruce Wayne. But there's a lot of things that they have in common. And then everyone around them so happens to fall victim to death all the time. And both those characters always have to deal with the mourning process, obviously, of those characters. And they always blame themselves and always question, does Spider-Man and Batman actually do justice for New York City and Gotham? Or does it hurt them instead? And not only that, what do I owe to these people? It's affecting my personal life, like I was saying before. You have him facing up against these really massive A-list villains, and especially with the actors portraying them. Tom Hardy and Jared Leto are A-list actors, in my opinion. Apart from the disastrous Joker portrayal in the DC universe, he's still a fantastic actor. So having those actors, it's really gonna enhance the character and make him so much better. Yes, you have Michael Keaton's Vulture, which he's fantastic. I love Michael Keaton. But he's up there in age, and the Vulture's the guy who uses wings to fly. He's not really a villain that's gonna give Peter Parker a challenge when he's fighting up against him. Then Mysterio, yes, finally a first real challenge. He made him like overthink everything. He ruined his mind basically with memories of Tony's death and the Avengers' death because you saw like a Easter egg of Black Widow and Captain America in those imaginary states that he was having from Mysterio's, whatever you want to call it, the digital enhancement he used to mess with Peter's head.
I just want a Sinister Six film. Whoever's going to give that to me gets my money.
I would love to see how they could, somehow incorporate Tom Holland's Spider-Man into the Sonyverse as well, because you have serious actors having a serious portrayal of the villains, but then you have Tom Holland's, funny, comedic like version of Spider-Man facing up against them. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. That's like Jared Leto's Joker facing up against Robert Pattinson's Batman. It just doesn't add up, and they need to find a way to somehow connect, both universes. So I think my personal take is that they should come to an agreement to include him in Sony projects and MCU projects as well. But the problem with that is, for Tom Holland's career, is that he's going to be playing Spider-Man for like the rest of his career, and I don't really see him doing other projects if that's the case. So it's really up to Tom Holland at the end of the day if he wants to go that route and be like, you know what, I'm still young, I'm going to be getting paid a shit ton of money, but I'm going to be playing Spider-Man like all the time.
I mean, he still does a lot of films in between because they take so long to make. I definitely think he's already said he'll love to play this character forever. He said that. So I don't think there's big worry on that. But like as a the talk of whether or not he'll have time, he just filmed. He had a Netflix film that's coming out soon with the one with Robert Pattinson in it. He has the
Yeah,
movie for Uncharted. He's still doing stuff on the side. Like Marvel's taking like a nice like 4 or 5 year break on their film. So I think he'll be fine if he does just play Spider-Man mainly and then do side roles. And like he is such a like great actor. Like you see him in other films, he's a different person. So like I don't think he's typecasted. So I think personally, I think he's gonna do well.
and another thing with Disney that I have a problem with, and I know like the viewers must be saying like, why is he always crapping on Disney? There's a lot of good things about Disney, but I want to talk about the negatives because a lot of people forget that there's pros and cons to the decisions that are made by Disney executives for the MCU, and people want to always put Disney on a pedestal, but I want to like move away from that and focus on some negatives because it's not really talked about, and I think people should talk about it more often. Another thing as well is that, like I was talking about before, the supporting cast. Besides the main villain, who else in the supporting cast really matches up to Tom Holland's acting? Not really anybody else, if you really look at it. I don't see anyone as talented as Tom Holland. And Zendaya needs to stop playing that emo version of Mary Jane because that's not Mary Jane. I don't mind that she's Mary Jane. I have no problem with that. I love her as an actress, but she could do so much when it comes to the acting department for that character. And the take that she has on Mary Jane right now, I just feel no emotional connection. And Peter starting to date Zendaya's Mary Jane, I don't feel any like real love in between them like I did with Kristen Dunst's Mary Jane and Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker.
Yeah, although they did say she's not actually Mary Jane.
I think they said that because they didn't want to upset viewers that want a comic book accurate depiction of the character. But if she is Mary Jane after all, I really don't mind. Why would they call her MJ but her name is not really Mary Jane? You know what I mean? Like,
I think it's like Michelle though, isn't it?
yeah, her name is Michelle Jones.
Yeah. See, I just think they don't want to do the same because Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy have been done. I think Disney's view on it was Spider-Man's been done because a lot of people like we're both avid Marvel fans. Like if they recasted like I know we wouldn't be happy, but if they recasted Tom Holland tomorrow and made a Spider-Man film next year, you'd still watch it. As upset as you would be, like I would still watch it.
100%. And I think Tom Holland is the only guy that I could see playing Spider-Man in the future until, obviously he gets way too old for the role because he can't be playing the role forever. But as of right now, he's the guy to play Peter Parker and Spider-Man. It's just the way that they're using him and the supporting cast they have and the story itself. I just feel that there's a problem with that. And Sony's not perfect, but they're building towards something fantastic. And a lot of people are sleeping on them because people are too focused on the MCU right now. But you see what DC's building right now, their own multiverse, where they could focus on so many different versions of characters. And you have Sony's verse, where they're building up a potential Spider-Man universe. Everyone's doing something different. And that's the way that you could beat the MCU, is if you're different, because we've seen DC try to be like Marvel and it failed. So now they're trying something different, and that's what's grabbing a lot of people's attentions. And even though a lot of people are like, oh, we're not asking for a Spider-Woman movie, we're not asking for a Kraven the Hunter movie, we're not asking for a Morbius movie, wait until Spider-Man faces off against those characters, and then you'll change your opinion on those movies.
I agree with you, but see that enforces the point I was trying to make. You've seen Mary Jane, you've seen Gwen Stacy. I think Disney's trying to do something different. And while I get that I mean, I don't personally see it as much as you do. I do know that people praise Disney a lot. They also roast Disney a lot. But I think Disney has done a lot of great things for Marvel, and I definitely think that they were like, hey, we've already done the Mary Jane, we've already done the Gwen Stacy. Let's do something different. And while I personally rather a more not even just like comic accurate acting of a Mary Jane. Like Mary Jane's still very smart. Zendaya doesn't have to act dumb and whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's just like it's the way she is MJ as a label, but she's not actually like she could have just been any other girl. You could have called her like I don't know Allison. That would have been sick. Like because nothing of her like character tropes remind me of MJ.
The good things about Disney, because I feel like I've been talking too negative about Disney. So the good things about Disney, what they've done for a Spider-Man character, is bringing a new take on the character, including him with the Avengers, which is fantastic fighting with Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor. It's fantastic to see that on the live screen, on the big screen, sorry. And not only that, but you see him travel to space, fight, villains that are associated to the Avengers. So he's not only staying in the city, but I feel that now it's too much outside of the city. Now it's time to focus back to New York City, which I hope they do in the next movie, unless he leaves New York City again, because now people know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man and they think he's a murderer. So maybe he needs to leave New York City once again, which honestly people are getting really tired of that. They want to see really fantastic like scenes where he's swinging in the city, like at the end of Spider-Man 2, the MCU version, and stop seeing, him not really doing anything fantastic when he's swinging, because Sony has great swinging sequences, and that's something I need to talk about as well. The sequences in those movies when he's swinging is spot on. Like, it's amazing how he's doing flips, all these creative like moves that he's doing in the air as he's swinging. And if in the MCU, it's just simple stuff. And I think they need to fix that problem. And not only that, going back to positive things as well, the number of suits that he's had is fantastic, because Spider-Man is like Batman. He doesn't have the same suit every single time. He changes his suits depending on who he's facing, who he's fighting. So that take of the character is fantastic as well. But I think they should drop the CGI costume for Spider-Man and make it more realistic. And I remember the original unused suit for Civil War was an actual real suit. Even though I like the take they went with in Civil War and it was CGI, it didn't look as cheesy as it did in future projects. Especially like the Iron Spider suit, I wasn't really a big fan of how it looked. I would have preferred the original gold and red suit, which was a concept art that they didn't end up using. They used a new take of the Iron Spider suit.
Yeah, I would have liked the yellow and red Iron Spider suit too. One's crazy.
Yeah, it's a fantastic suit that a lot of people would have appreciated to see. But moving forward, these are things that Sony executives and Disney executives could only talk about and discuss what the future is for Spider-Man. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. We've talked about so many scenarios, the negatives and the positives of Sony and Disney. So I just wanted to say thank you so much once again for coming back on the podcast. And there's any additional information that you would like to add?
No, I think we covered a lot. I definitely am excited for the future of Spider-Man. I hope Sony and Disney find a way to continue working together so that we get our Spider-Verse and our MCU Spider-Verse. And yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I think that Spider-Man is going to have a fantastic future no matter what happens, if he's in Sony, in Disney, or in both. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, guys, for listening, for supporting me. Don't forget to like this video and to subscribe to my channel and watch anything related to superheroes or Spider-Man videos that I've came up with in the past, or anything else that interests you. So thank you so much, guys, once again, and have a good one.